Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a complete game changer for enterprise AI. If you've ever felt completely frustrated because a generic AI model gave you a confidently wrong answer about your own company's internal data, trust me, you are definitely not alone. We're going to dive right into exactly why generative AI sometimes struggles so much in the business world, and more importantly, how we can systematically fix it using a brilliant technology called RAG.
Okay, so to really understand the problem, I want you to picture this. You've hired an absolutely brilliant Ivy League educated consultant. They've literally read millions of books, but there's a catch. They've been locked in a room without any internet access since 2021. Now, if you walk into that room and ask them to summarize your company's highly specific Q3 financial report from just last week, what happens? Well, they don't know the answer. But because they're hardwired to be super helpful, they'll just guess. They will confidently hallucinate a response that sounds incredibly plausible but is completely 100% wrong. And you know what? That is exactly what happens when you ask a standard large language model about your private, proprietary enterprise data.
So, how do we fix this hallucination problem? Well, we definitely don't send that consultant back to school to memorize all your company's files. That would be incredibly expensive and take way too much time. Instead, we use a concept called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. Implementing RAG is exactly like giving that isolated consultant a highly organized, lightning-fast research assistant. Now, when you ask a question, the assistant instantly fetches the exact right internal documents, hands them over to the consultant, and basically says, hey, answer the question using only these documents. The result? You get accurate, factual, and highly contextual answers. Here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll officially meet retrieval augmented generation. Then we'll trace the evolution of RAG. Next, we'll look at how to actually measure its quality, and finally, how to avoid those pesky production pitfalls. Let's get into it. Section 1. Meet Retrieval Augmentation Generation and how it cures AI hallucinations.
Let's make this super concrete. Imagine you're a sales director, and you urgently need to check the custom contract renewal clauses for a massive enterprise client. Let's call them Omega Corp. The core of a RAG system uses 3 steps to get your answer without any guesswork. First up is indexing. This is where we take all your messy, disorganized sales contracts, clean them up, chop them into neat little data chunks, and store them in a specialized database. Second is retrieval. When you ask about Omega Corp's renewal terms, the system searches that database for that exact contract chunk. And third, generation. The AI pairs your specific question with that retrieved contract chunk and generates a precise answer based strictly on the actual legal agreements you signed. Pretty cool, right?
Moving right along to Section 2, the evolution of RAG. We'll look at 3 distinct paradigms here. We start with what's called naive RAG. This is your entry-level, basic retrieve and read setup, and it basically just uses simple keyword matching. Now, it works totally fine for really straightforward queries. But what if our sales director asks, how do Omega Corp's renewal penalties compare to their contract from last year? Well, naive RAG might just fetch a random paragraph that happens to contain the word penalty, completely missing the nuance of that year-over-year comparison. It lacks precision, and honestly, it often brings back a lot of irrelevant junk.
So, to fix those blind spots, we level up to advanced RAG. This introduces some highly targeted pre-retrieval and post-retrieval strategies. Instead of just blindly chopping up documents, it uses something called a sliding window approach. This means it reads the text before and after a keyword, so it doesn't lose vital context. It also leans heavily on metadata tagging. So when you're searching for Omega Corp, it filters the search by tags like year 2024 and status, active, making sure it grabs the current clause instead of some dead contract from 2018. Then it literally re-ranks the data, pushing the absolute most critical facts right to the top before the AI even reads them. It's a massive upgrade.
But eventually, as your business needs get more complex, you demand a modular RAG ecosystem. This paradigm completely abandons those rigid 1, 2, 3 sequential steps. Instead, think of it as a highly adaptable, fluid network of specialized functional components. You can swap out search modules, bolt on new capabilities, and dynamically create entirely new pathways depending on just how complicated the user's question is. Here's where it gets really powerful. Look at how modular RAG handles a truly complex enterprise question. What if our director asks, how did Omega Corp's custom renewal terms impact our Q3 revenue projections? Now we've got a query crossing 2 totally different departments, sales and finance. Modular RAG uses dynamic routing to send that question to both the legal contracts database and the financial ledger at the exact same time. It might use a multi-query strategy to rewrite the user's single, messy question into several precise backend searches.
And finally, specialized task adapters seamlessly fuse these totally different internal information streams into one perfectly accurate cross-departmental answer. It's like magic, but it's just great architecture. Section 3, measuring output and quality, because we have to know if it's actually working. You know the old saying, you can't manage what you don't measure? Evaluating these systems requires balancing two absolutely critical areas. For retrieval quality, we look at things like hit rate and context relevance. Basically, did the system actually fetch the correct Omega Corp contract? If it fetched the office cafeteria menu instead, well, it completely failed. Then for generation quality, we measure answer faithfulness, which ensures the AI's final response doesn't suddenly contradict the retrieved legal document, and noise robustness, which tests whether the AI can successfully ignore irrelevant clauses and stay hyper-focused on exactly what the user asked.
Finally, Section 4, avoiding production pitfalls. Let's talk about the real world. Taking this technology from a fun little lab prototype to full-blown enterprise scale is, well, it's a reality check. That's where the real risks emerge. As you can see here, a minor technical flaw at the foundation of your architecture doesn't just stay a quirky technical glitch. It travels rapidly up the chain. If left unchecked, it escalates to directly impact business performance, legal compliance, and most importantly, user trust.
To survive in production, you've absolutely got to tackle a few core pitfalls head-on. First, data quality. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out. If your internal records are a chaotic mess, the AI's answers will be too. Second, strict security. You have got to secure confidential data so the system doesn't accidentally leak private client discounts or executive salaries to an intern. Third, resource scalability. Making sure you have the proper cloud environments to handle massive computational loads without crashing. And lastly, continuous monitoring, guaranteeing the system remains perfectly aligned and unbiased as your business data shifts over time. Which brings us to the ultimate question. RAG is an absolutely incredible bridge between the vast, almost magical reasoning power of large language models and the specific, private truth of your own enterprise data. But before you rush out and invest in rolling out an enterprise-wide system, you have to look inward and ask yourself, is your internal data clean, secure, and truly ready to empower this brilliant new AI assistant? Because at the end of the day, the AI can really only be as good as the knowledge you feed it. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into RAG, and I'll see you on the next explainer.